Welcome to Novelist Spotlight. This is Mike Consol. This is the place where we interview published fiction writers to gather their insights, writing techniques, and advice, and to get up to speed on their latest piece of work. In the Spotlight, this episode is Kale Lawrence. She's the author of the novel, The Magi Menagerie, the first of what is slated to be a trilogy. Kale Lawrence, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to be talking about your book, but I also know something about you that's going to be of great interest to our listeners, and that is that you are a marketing professional. You're a marketing person or director or what have you with a company. That's your daytime job.
Yep.
And that's a huge issue for so many people who write books for a living, is that they don't really have a lot of skill when it comes to marketing. It's not their strength. Mm-hmm. It's not something you even necessarily want to spend time doing, but it's become such a big issue because not only do a lot of people self-publish, but even if you go the traditional route, publishing houses today expect that you're going to do some marketing. They want you to have an oar in the water. We're going to publish it. We're going to do this and that for you, but we want you, it's your book. We want you to put some muscle behind this as well. So let's start with a little bit of marketing advice from a marketing professional. And I know that you've applied what you know about marketing to the book publishing business and your own novel. What are some of the primary channels or the most powerful channels that you would point people to for promoting their book?
Definitely. Yeah, you have it right. Marketing is a very challenging issue for any author, even authors who are familiar with the industry. I feel like even though I have some marketing experience behind me, it's still amazing to work with other people and kind of spread the love for marketing as well. But I think that the most important thing that an author needs to look into for to really get their book out there is to look into social media, but specifically Instagram and TikTok right now are huge drivers of the book industry. So you can walk into any Barnes & Noble right now. They have a table of book talk books where these books actually became popular on TikTok. And you have, like bookstagrammers who are constantly promoting books for publishing houses, for authors. Those are very important tools to have on your side.
Let me ask you about TikTok for a second, because most people, including me, think of TikTok as a place where people make, fun, goofy videos, a lot of them doing dance moves or even getting used in commercials like for Applebee's and such. So give me an example of an effective strategy for marketing on TikTok. Are we still talking about a video here? Is it creating a video for your own book and then dispersing it through TikTok?
So I actually have experimented with two different things here. Originally I made a trailer for my book and I put it on TikTok and I promoted it and it got a lot of attention, but the very polished nature of that video didn't gain as much traction as I thought. And that's what's kind of interesting with TikTok is that it's very authentic, very real content that's not necessarily planned out. It's very spur of the moment, organic. And so those videos actually tend to do better. There is a trend, or at least at one point, there was a trend going around where readers would be reading their favorite book and they would actually record themselves like reacting to a certain section or crying over the book. And then they would post those TikToks. And of course, people are like, what is so important about that book that it causes such an emotional reaction? And so that causes, questions and people want to know. And so they have to go buy the book. So I would say the strategy is relating to your audience in a very natural way. A lot of times you'll also see authors just make funny videos, just based on the environment of authors promoting online anyway. So I just did one not too long ago where I was poking fun at all of those user bots that will comment on your Instagram post saying, promote this book at such and such website. And it's just spam based on the hashtags that you use. But that really gained this connection with my audience. It really resonated with them, and it made them want to learn more about me as a person, me as an author. So that's actually a good thing to keep in mind too.
So let me ask you, the first video that you did, then you're saying you kind of overproduced it. You made it look too
I did.
professional, and it was
Yeah.
just kind of a what you realized was what they're looking for is something that's more raw, organic, authentic. Just, hey, person to person, tell it to me from the heart or from the funny part of your head, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. It grabs attention, and then you create some kind of tease or some kind of intrigue that gets people to actually investigate the book and hopefully buy it.
Yeah, definitely. And that works the best on TikTok.
Now, Instagram, I think of as like, my wife's on Instagram all the time. She's looking at photos, she's looking at shoes, she's following people from The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, that sort of thing. Talk a little bit about Instagram, because I know it's very powerful. What
Yeah.
would you do with Instagram? Give me an example, maybe your own, how you used it or how you've seen it used that you think is effective.
Oh, so sorry. My cat is trying to be an interview star too. Hey.
That's okay.
Sorry.
This is an authentic podcast. It's an authentic podcast with people, with animals, and so this is good. Let her cry.
Yeah, she's a Siamese, so she's very talkative.
I hear her.
Yeah. So with Instagram is they're kind of playing in the same waters as TikTok with the reels. So you do see some of that authentic, very short form video on Instagram as well. But for Instagram, I feel like it's more conversation based, and it is very much a staged environment. So you see those very professional photos. You do see some very professional videos on there as well. So it's just a slightly, I would say, upscale version of TikTok. But it's used in different ways. So I love to.
Could you use a TikTok? Like, for instance, did you use your TikTok video on Instagram as well? Would it play on Instagram just as well? You did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you're once you come up with an effective video, you can use it on all your channels, basically. Now, I understand what you're saying is that the channels are different. The audiences can be a little bit different. If you have the time and the inclination, you can tweak the video or the message in such a way that it appeals more directly to that audience, which is very much what marketing is about: targeting, hitting the audience directly, and so on. So let's go beyond TikTok and Instagram. Is Twitter effective these days? Is Facebook itself effective? YouTube? I mean, where else do you go with it?
I do have a YouTube channel as well. And at one time I was tweeting. So Twitter is actually a great place for authors as well. Twitter can be very, very much a place for journalism, for news, for authors. I don't really play in the Twitter space as much anymore. And even Facebook, I've really dropped off the face of the earth on Facebook.
A lot of people have, yeah.
Yeah. It's not as powerful in reaching my audience as what an Instagram or a TikTok would be. For instance, if you post a video on Facebook, it could be super professional. You might only get 50 views if you have a smaller audience, but then you put that same video on TikTok, you can get thousands of views, and Instagram as well. So I really focus the most on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.
Now, my understanding is that Facebook, if you are willing to spend money, and it's not cheap, but if you go there and you do targeted marketing on Facebook, that can be very powerful. So if a person's independently wealthy, let's say, and they've got those kind of resources and they've decided, I just want to push my book and I'm willing to spend the money, I understand that it can be very targeted and very effective, but that's a lot of money in that case, is it not?
Yes, it definitely can be. And one mistake that a lot of authors will do is they'll just go and select, the very broad demographics of their audience. They're not getting down to the nitty gritty. So what you want to do is build your email list and then use those emails for custom audiences or lookalike audiences where you are targeting those people who have already interacted with you. And then also it tells the algorithms on Facebook, all right, so you've you've given me this user to target. I'm going to find someone who looks just like them, and so you have more of a response to those ads.
Let me ask you about TikTok and Instagram again, because one of the questions I have, and I think some of our audience members do, is that when you're interacting with those, when you're putting content on there, is that strictly through the phone, or can you actually access it and post stuff on a PC?
So TikTok is very much app focused, as is Instagram. Instagram does have a few things that you can post on a PC, but a mobile device, a tablet, is very much recommended. Um, and also, one thing to keep in mind too is if you are a video extraordinaire, like I love to edit in Adobe Premiere. I actually find the whole video creation tools very hard to use on TikTok. So I actually create the video on my PC or on my Mac, and then I throw that video over to my phone and then upload it on my phone or through the app. And so that seems to work a little bit better for me.
Now you have a skill for this. You have a skill. That's a program that not everybody knows. I don't know that there's very many people who know how to use any kind of real professional editing software. However, the good news is that what you're saying is if you're making a video and you're being authentic and maybe again being funny, being mischievous, being putting a little bit of intrigue in there, that's the kind of thing you can do with your iPhone, for crying out loud. You can just go ahead and video yourself. You can keep doing it until you get it right. A simple editing program can chop that up if you even want to bother doing that. The length of videos is very limited on TikTok, is it not? What's the maximum?
Yes. I think the maximum now is 3 minutes. It used to be only a minute.
How about Instagram? Is that a little bit more liberal? Not that you'd want to go past 3 minutes because you don't want to try the viewers' patience, but is it about the same, or do they have a more generous time limit?
So from what I last checked, the Instagram Reels are capped at 1 minute, and then IGTV, which is more of the long form video content, I believe that goes up to 30 minutes. I can't remember, but it does allow for longer.
Okay. But as a marketer, you would tell people keep it succinct, keep it to the point. Think about your audience, just like you do when you're writing your book. You want to think about your audience. At least if you're trying to be a commercial success at all. I know that there's plenty of writers out there who would be of the opinion that, you know what, write what you feel, write what you believe. That's fine. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't dissuade anybody from doing that. But when you're doing a video, a short, sharp shock, as Maggie Thatcher would say, is probably the best approach. Now, I heard you say my audience. So talk about your audience, because when you're making a video, you're thinking about, you're going to deliver a certain message that goes to your genre. First of all, let's talk about your genre. The Magi Menagerie, which I might be mispronouncing that middle word, so you can correct me on that. But is it fantasy? What's the genre?
Sure. So it kind of falls into several different genres. First of all, it's a historical fantasy. And then it's also in that new adult age category. So this actually came about, I think, like 10 years ago. New adult started getting thrown around. It's that age range right after YA, but not so much like adult. It's more of that 18 to 35 age range. So I really focus the story and have characters of those ages. It really falls into those categories, but it also kind of ties into action and adventure and all those good things.
So what does that tell you about your audience? If once you're making a video, you're making any kind of marketing outreach, what do you think of your audience in terms of their demographics or psychographics?
Mm-hmm. I try, because I actually fall in that demographic, I try to make content that resonates with my generation. So I'm a older millennial, and I grew up really loving like Harry Potter and the Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings. And so I kind of just, I act like myself, and I know that other bookworms out there are going to relate to that. But I also really like to be kind of funny in my content, and I feel like comedy really reaches people in this age group as well.
Yeah, everybody likes a good laugh or to be amused.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. So I have to ask you about the title, because the one thing I can imagine, the thought bubbles I'm seeing over the listeners' heads right now is, if you want to market your book, why did you make the title something that people might struggle with in terms of the actual name? That middle, like when I was reading it, I thought the Magi Menagerie, and I was not accurate with that. Not that that necessarily matters. If it captures you, it captures you. But when you want word of mouth to work for you, sometimes that can be a little bit of a stumbling block. Did that concern you at all?
Not really. I actually came up with the title first, and so I knew that I was dead set on having that as the title. I almost feel like the title is kind of like your front door to the book, and the book is very much, it's a little bit more of a challenging read. It's very I'm trying to think of some good words here. It's very introspective. It's very artistic. And so I kind of wanted people to see the title and say, okay, maybe this is a book that might not be like a super easy teen read. It's not contemporary by any means. It sounds very artsy, and that's kind of what I wanted. But also, I don't know. Sometimes I don't think about, I actually did not think about the title in terms of my audience at the time, because as the title came first, the story came second. And that's really where I started understanding, okay, this book is for new adults. And it's very, very British and very, it might be over the head, like over some people's heads, but that's okay. And I really hope that, even if people can't pronounce it, like if they just say, hey, that Magi book, that works for
Right.
me.
Exactly. You may start, if it catches on, you may start mispronouncing it yourself intentionally, because look, if that's what people want to call it, I'm there. That's good enough. Now, I know that you made some mention in some notes that we exchanged about the publishing industry in the pandemic. And I know that sales of books, the one thing the pandemic has done is really helped out the sales of books. People are spending a lot more time cloistered in their homes, and they're doing more reading. So, which is a wonderful thing for people who write like us. Talk about, and I don't know if that was what you were referencing, or how do you feel that the pandemic has affected the publishing industry from either the author standpoint or the publishing house standpoint?
It's kind of been a double-edged sword. So like you said, it was very positive where, people were buying more books. They were looking for more entertainment that they could do at home, which actually was great. But then it caused shortages with paper, with binding materials. There was a huge backlog for printers to do like second runs of books. And so it backed up pretty far into like the end of 2020. And now we're still seeing that with the cost of paper going up, with cargo ships and logistic issues. It's just really hard to get, especially new books, quickly. And so there are retailers right now who are saying, you should probably order these new titles now if you want them for the holidays, because that's how long it's taking to get these books to these retailers because of supply chain issues. So it's been interesting, to say the least. But I think long term, it's going to be good. People are still reading. It might be a temporary shift to more digital books and audiobooks. But honestly, I think the fact that people are reading and they're still continuously buying books is a very encouraging thing.
Yeah. And it's a huge growth segment of the industry has been audiobooks. I read all day because I'm a magazine editor. So evenings, my eyes are burned out, and I love audiobooks for
Yeah.
that reason. It allows me to do things like exercise or take a walk or take a drive and still be able to consume good writing. And I love the kind of that oral storytelling tradition of somebody actually telling me the story, especially when you have a
Yeah.
good reader. Now, I notice that you've got an electronic edition, an ebook, and a print edition. I looked, you don't have an audio edition, it doesn't look like. I went to Audible and checked there. Is that something that you are hoping to move to add to the lineup eventually?
Definitely. So I was actually waiting until after my release, which was September 7th. And I am just now starting that process. So I will be doing auditions with voice actors very soon. And I'm so excited.
Oh, you should be. I mean, that is such a big, like I said, it's a big growth area. And it's I think that there are a lot of people who actually have difficulty reading. It's a strenuous activity for a lot of people. And there are people who are, I mean, if you're not visual, let's say you're
Hmm.
auditory, an audiobook is just going to do that much more for you than a printed book, whether it's an ebook or on paper. So it's just been a godsend to have audiobooks for so many people who, and
Yeah.
even, I'm, I know people who are the senior citizens who just say, I can't really read anymore just because my vision is not very good anymore, but the audio
Hmm.
is there for them and there for all of us for that matter. So interesting. Let me get back to actually, I have one more question before we start talking about your book some more. Although this
Sure.
relates, is independent publishing versus traditional publishing. That is the big, kind of stress point for a lot of writers. Did you go the independent route, or was your book published traditionally? And I hesitate to say traditional because I think traditional now is self-publishing,
Yeah.
since there's so many more books self-published. But what route did you take?
So I am an independently published author, but with the mindset of a traditional publisher. So I'm taking everything I know about the industry and really launching this book with, a good budget. And, but yes, I'm definitely an indie author. I love it. It's just a great way to maintain a lot of that creative eye. I don't have to change the title if, my publisher says I need to because I am the publisher. And I really love it because it gives you more in the sense of royalties. With traditional publishing, more people are taking a cut of your sales. And so
Mm-hmm.
royalties are a huge thing. I really want this to be profitable. So honestly, independent publishing was the best deal for this.
Well, and for a person like you who's a marketing professional who really understands marketing and knows what to do with this, it could be a lot more profitable if you start pushing sales through your marketing and you do get so much
Mhm.
more per copy. But you have the mindset of a traditional publisher. So that says to me that what you're thinking is, I'm perfectly happy to go the traditional route once they see me sell some big numbers
Mhm.
going the alternative or independent route. And then they can make me an offer that I can refuse if I choose to, especially
Indeed.
since I've got two more books, at least two more books coming. Because
Yep.
right now, my understanding is volume one's out. You expect it
Mhm.
to be a trilogy, but if it's highly successful as a trilogy, you wouldn't rule out a fourth or fifth or sixth edition.
Indeed. Yeah, I would definitely. I already have some ideas for like spin off works. So I'm keeping my options open for sure. Um, but yeah, unless, I mean, it's very, I would say that this has happened several times in the last decade where independent authors have gone the indie route and then they were picked up by a traditional publisher who gave them way wider distribution and more marketing. And um, so that's always a opportunity that, I wouldn't rule out. But for now, the independence of being able to make my own choices, call my own shots, that's incredible.
Well, and you know that this plays into the traditional publisher's hands in a way because everybody who publishes independently is test marketing their product.
Mhm.
If you'll pardon the use of the word products, a lot of people wouldn't think of their writing as a product, but the fact of the matter is a traditional publishing house sees it as a product. They need it to be
Yep.
profitable. When people go out there, and they demonstrate that people are interested in this. They like the writing. They like the story. And it's like, hey, it's been test marketed for us. Let's go ahead and pick this author up, make an offer that's worthwhile to them and to us. And we're off and running with it. So I would imagine that traditional publishers pay a lot of attention to who are the independent authors who are selling a lot of copies. I don't know exactly how they keep their finger on that pulse, but I'm sure there's methods for doing it. And this has kind of been, a boon for traditional publishers as well, I would imagine. Would you not agree?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's a lot of talented writers who do choose the independent route, mostly because they're similar to me in that they have a little bit of a background in the industry and they just really want to be their own boss. So I can definitely see where that's going, but also there's a side of the industry that still kind of looks down on us indie authors, because our work isn't professional, and it's a challenge to really rise above that mindset, especially with like the Magi Menagerie that went through 2 editors. I rewrote the book 6 times. I
6 times.
hired,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. It's a
I
lot of work.
hired it. Oh my gosh, so much work. But I hired a publicity company. I hired a cover artist. So I invested quite a lot to make this a professional looking project. And honestly, I'm a little biased, but it stands up against what traditional publishers are putting out. So,
Mm.
yeah.
And it's a beautiful cover. That it
Thank you.
definitely connotes what the content of the book is all about. It has a historic and mystical appeal to it. So money well spent. Now let me ask you this: why write at all? Why did you decide to write? Because let's face it, I'm a writer too. I went the self-publishing route, although I have 3 other manuscripts that I have in reserve right now because I'm hoping to go the traditional route with those, at least
Nice.
at this point. But there's a lot of frustration with writing just in terms of day to day being able to produce and being happy with the content. A lot of people, I think there's a tremendous number of people who want to write books and they sit down and they spend a day or a week trying and they realize this is way too frustrating and they give up. You didn't give up.
Mhm.
I didn't give up. But I want to ask you, why do you write?
That's a really great question. So for the longest time, I stopped writing. Writing has always been a passion for me. It's always been in my lifeblood, really. But there was a good stretch of time through my 20s where I just was not passionate about writing anymore. It was a chore. It was unattainable. But then as I, passed my 30 mark, all of a sudden that just sparked back into life, specifically with the Magi Menagerie. So that's why I believe so much in this project. It's because it sparked me back into creativity again, especially during a very rough time in recent history. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot going on in 2020, but this book was being formed. And I feel like a lot of the things that were in the news made their way into this book, even though it's historical, those themes really translated into the book. So I write because this is a way that I can express myself and just feel confident about myself again. And it's just a wonderful tool that I can just fall into and know that it's going to be a comfort.
I just recently finished this big Sylvia Plath biography by, I think her name's Heather Clark. But what Sylvia Plath said during her short and tragic life was, I write because there's a voice inside me that will not allow me to
Mm.
stop.
Yep.
She has that voice inside. I think that's probably what you have. I know it's what I've got, and a lot of people, because it takes that kind of persistence. If you don't have that kind of a drive, you're not going to put up with the work involved. So let's talk about what's a good writing day in the life of Kale Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a good writing day, how would you characterize it? How many words do you produce that day? How many pages, however you want to kind of measure it? Or maybe it's not quantity. What's a good writing day for you?
So at first it was quantity for me. It was, can I do a 3,000 word sprint? Can I do 5,000 words in a weekend? And for like the first part of this project, I would rate myself on how many words I could get in a weekend because, I've got a day job 5 days a week. And then I go home and I just like write all weekend. But then I realized that writing was very stressed. It was it was not emotional whatsoever. It was writing for a word count. And when I made the transition to quality over quantity, that's when I saw my best work come out. So now I don't hold myself to any word counts. I basically say a good writing day for me is even if I wrote a paragraph and it sounds wonderful and it's just hitting the mark, that is a good writing day for me.
Interesting. So talk a little bit about the process. Do you get up in the morning early? Do you stay up late at night? Do you have the luxury of carving out a couple hours midday and because you can break your workday up? And also not only what time of day, but what is your space for writing? Because some people are very ritualistic and they have a space where they always write because it works for them. So what is it for you in terms of time and place?
Sure. For time, usually it's on the weekends. However, I do over my lunch break, if I don't have any lunch meetings or anything, I will take a break and try to get some writing in. And even if I don't get a lot in over the lunch break, that could be more of a planning session for what I'm going to write later. But in terms of place, I will write in my home office, which I was quarantined in for many, many months. I love writing in public places, though. I love Starbucks. I actually developed this strange need to travel to random cities and stay in hotels and write in the hotel. So almost have like a little writer's getaway. And I think that actually started because I was on a work trip when this story really came to me. And I was staying in a hotel. So I had that great experience of mapping out this entire series in a hotel. And now I'm like, okay, where's the next city? Where's the next hotel? We're going to write another chapter. And so that was kind of a unique way to get out of my boring office and kind of experience new places. And that stimulated my mind to write more.
Kale, I got to agree with you completely. I love writing in public places. There's something about having activity around me that stimulates thinking and writing and just more imagination. And also, I notice when I travel, what you're talking about, while traveling, kind of being able to unplug from the day to day, even if it's a business trip for that matter, it's just a change of pace. And that change of pace is stimulative and it really works for me and obviously for you. So let me also ask you about to the aspiring writer out there, somebody who's just getting started or thinking about getting started. What's your best piece of advice? Not counting the marketing, because we've already covered that, but what's your best piece of advice for the person out there the wannabe novelist?
Oh, right now, the one piece that I can think of that's just ringing true is stand firm, because there are going to be people who will not like your book. There will be people who will love your book. And they will let you know. But I feel like a lot of writers will get discouraged, especially right when they put out a project. They've worked so long on it, so hard on it, and then they start getting the feedback trickling in. And not everyone is going to love your book. There's going to be those 1-star ratings. And sometimes that can shake a writer to their core. It certainly has for me. Even with this project, but it's almost like a lesson in confidence and knowing that you do have a talent and that you wrote this project for a reason. It just needs to find its audience.
Tell me a little bit more about your book. We're running low on time right now, but tell me more about your book. Who will it appeal to? I think you've kind of covered that, but give us a little bit more insight into the book. put some messages out there that our audience could really kind of assess whether or not this kind of rings their bell.
Yeah, definitely. So while this takes place in 1906, it's very much a reflection of today's society as well, but also a reflection of where we've come from as a society. Um, I think what's really unique about it is that it's told in three different perspectives from three different aged people in different areas and parts of their life. And their stories all kind of mesh together. And the it's kind of a twisty plot, lots of adventure, lots of magic. And if people love like secret societies, if they love non-traditional love stories, maybe something that leans more to the LGBTQ side, if they love artifacts like ancient artifacts and history, I think that this will really appeal to them.
Is there a particular aspect of the book? And I hate to ask this question because nobody wants to say, my favorite body part on my child is this or that, but is there some aspect of the book that you consider its real strength? Is it the dialogue? Is it the pacing? Is it the plot? What did you come away with at the end that you just felt like, I really hit it out of the park on this particular aspect of the book? Maybe the characters.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say?
I think the characters are my favorite, honestly. That and I do like my exposition. I feel like I'm very, very artistic in the way that I turn phrases, and it's something that you don't see a lot of these days. It's challenging and wonderful, but honestly, when it came down to the end of it, I realized just how close I was to my cast of characters and how much of a difference they made in my life. And even though they're fictional, they're parts of me. And I almost got to learn more about myself as I was writing. So I would say my characters.
I think that that's something that people who don't write don't get. When you write a book, when you write a fiction book, and you're creating characters and you're creating vignettes, these situations, these characters become very real. I mean, and they do become part of the mosaic of your life, and you kind of fall in love with them. And I'm not at all surprised to hear you say it's the characters, because that is just so integral to what a writer does. You're a creator, and it can be a really heady experience. Kale Lawrence, thank you for the time. Congratulations on the book. I'm going to look forward to seeing your progress as you go to volume 2 and volume 3. And we may revisit this down the road. So
Absolutely.
appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.